Welcome back, and turning now to the latest in the trial of the man charged with murdering former Navy SEAL and American sniper Chris Kyle and his best friend. Jurors are learning much more about what authorities found at the home of suspect Eddie Ray Ruth. Empty bottles of whiskey and marijuana were seized after the shooting, and while the defense mounts an insanity defense, prosecutors say he knew what he was doing and he knew right from wrong. His trial brings up a number of issues, from using PTSD as a defense to having a trial as a movie about the victim's life is up for an Oscar. Troy Slayton is a criminal defense attorney in Los Angeles. Dan Schorr, former criminal prosecutor, Westchester County and New York City. Troy, first to you, in the sense that the insanity defense is just so hard to prove. It only works about 1% of the time in this case. Did they even have a chance there in this trial?
They do. All they have to show is that he was suffering from such a mental disease or defect that he didn't know right from wrong, and that he couldn't control the impulse to do the wrong thing.
All right, so Dan, let's look at the case a little bit in this sense. I want to play quickly the 911 call from the sister of the suspect right after the shooting.
He said that he killed 2 guys. They went out to a shooting range, and he's all crazy. He's psychotic. I don't know if he's on drugs or not.
And after that, there was a police chase from the sister's home. Eddie Ray left that, and police eventually caught him. In this sense, for you, Dan, people don't run from the police if they don't know what they did is wrong. So if he knew enough to run from the police, does that in that sense prove in one way or another that he knows that what he did a little while ago was wrong?
Right, and that's a strong argument for the prosecution. There's no doubt the defendant suffers from mental illness, but there's a big difference between just having mental illness and having a legal insanity defense that you could win with on trial. You have to show, if you're the defense, that he didn't know what he was doing was wrong. As you said, he ran from the police. He told his sister, according to her 911 call, that he had just committed murder. And a sheriff's deputy testified yesterday that he said he shot these 2 people because they weren't talking to him, a clear motive. So there's a lot of evidence showing that he did understand what he was doing and that it was wrong. As I said, he has mental illness, but that's not a legal defense. That's not an insanity defense.
In Troy, as a criminal defense attorney, you've got this suspect who says, I shot them because they were in the back seat and they weren't talking to me. That's according to at least 2 sheriff's deputies. At the same time, you have this text message from Chris Kyle saying this dude is straight up nuts, as he is talking to his friend there about this person they are taking out to the shooting range. At some level, would the defense, do they have any other options but to take the insanity defense here, or could you come up with something else?
No, the insanity defense is their only defense because it's clear that he did it. Even his attorney stood up and said that he did it. But the text message and the 911 call from both his sister and the decedents, the victims here, Chris Kyle, say that he was nuts. The sister says he was psychotic, he was babbling, he was clearly crazy. And with regard to the car chase, that could just show that he was suffering from paranoid delusions and thought that everybody was after him. It doesn't necessarily show consciousness of guilt.
So, Dan, if there's no consciousness of guilt in this sense, although allegedly during this confession he did say to one of the sheriff's deputies, I think they forgive me, referring to the people he had just shot, Chris Kyle. I'm wondering here, as a former prosecutor, why isn't there a plea deal? They're not going for the death penalty, but at the same time, he's not pled guilty and spending the rest of his life in prison. Do you think they really think they can get him off?
Well, there's no plea deal from the prosecution because they have an extremely strong case. He shot and killed 2 people without any argument of self-defense. He just picked up weapons and shot and killed them. Now, insanity defenses like this are usually a defense of last resort. When someone has no factual or legal defense, they go for insanity. And as I said, he has mental illness, but there's a lot of evidence showing that he doesn't have enough for a legal insanity defense to succeed. The prosecution has a strong case. They have no reason to plead this case down to less than life in prison.
And you're looking right now at the picture.
Insanity is a legal defense.
And you're looking right now at the picture
Insanity
of Chris Kyle
is a legal defense, and
Troy,
and the only issue is whether he's going to prison or whether he's going to a prison mental hospital. Those are the only options here.
Well,
but if he's found not guilty by...
Go ahead, Dan.
If he's found not guilty by legal insanity, right, he'll probably go to a mental institution, but you don't know how long he'll be there for. He could later be released. If he's convicted of murder, he'll be in prison probably for the rest of his life.
Well, and obviously we saw that that has happened and played out in the past in some very high-profile trials. All right, Dan Schorr, also Troy Slayton, we really appreciate your guys' time here today as you break this case down. The trial continues next week, and of course we're going to continue to watch it closely. Thanks.